Okay, go ahead, John.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is John Cogley, and I'm the owner of Daniel Smith. And I'm here today with you to go over the new Blick set and show you the colors. We'll experiment with the colors. I'll show you each and every one of them. Answer your questions. I love questions, so please ask me your questions. I'm not an artist. Um, I'm a manufacturer. So I can tell you about the chemistry, the physics of the colors. But if you say which color would make clouds, I'm going to be totally at a loss. So any color questions, I'd love to go over those with you. So let me point this down and let's begin. Okay. So Daniel Smith has 261 colors. And I'm always asked, John, how did you pick 10 colors out of 261? Well, I tried to look at the colors when I was looking at the Blick set that would offer something unique and interesting. All the colors, the reason we have so many colors, so many yellows or so many blues, is that every pigment is different. Some granulate, which I'll be going over what that means. Some are staining, some are non-staining. So there's different characteristics that as an artist you would use for certain colors. So let's begin with just going over the Blick set. It's a really very nice set. Again, it consists of 10 5mm tubes. And we'll look at each one. There's Quinacridone Rose. There's also Quinacridone Sienna, Quinacridone Gold. Quin, by the way, just means 5. These are 5-ring pigment structures. They're beautiful. The benefits of the quinacridones is they're transparent. They mix really, really well. They're great for anything floral, etc. They're quite beautiful. Then we also have the Hansa Yellow Medium, right here, Hansa Yellow Medium. We have Lunar Black. Lunar Black has some very interesting characteristics. It's a very granulating color, which I'll show you in a moment. Cascade Green, another very interesting color. Cascade Green, while it's one pigment, is considered a co-precipitated pigment, which means it's 2 pieces of pigment that are locked together and they break apart when you add water. So you can see ranges of blues and greens and yellows within this one color. Very interesting. Ultramarine Blue. Ultramarine Blue is PB29. Its sister is French Ultramarine. One thing interesting about the ultramarine and the French ultramarine, they are the same exact pigment. The ultramarine is slightly smaller pigment, particle size. The French ultramarine is slightly larger. And because of that, when the light hits the French ultramarine, it shifts toward the red. And when it hits the ultramarine, it actually shifts toward the green. So ultramarine is slightly cooler, French ultramarine slightly warmer. I picked the slightly cooler. Imperial Purple, another beautiful color. Sap Green. And then a specialized color is the Pearlescent White. We have both Pearlescent White and Pearlescent Shimmer. Again, they're same exact pigment. The Pearlescent Shimmer is slightly larger, Pearlescent White slightly smaller. This is used to give life to eyes, for example, human eyes. We always have that beautiful shine to our eyes. It's a good way to bring life into eyes or to highlight areas. So with that, let me show you. The set talks about the different colors. The artwork on this set was done by one of my favorite artists. This is Besnick. And Besnick has a great site. He's also one of our brand ambassadors. And you can find his site here in the back and learn from the artist workshop that I did with him more about Besnick and how he uses colors. He's a master of using brushes. It's very, very interesting to see. And this tells a small story about each one of the colors. Okay. So let me show you what the colors look like. This, and then we'll paint each one out. This is Hansa Yellow. Okay, so Hansa Yellow. And this is 1 part paint to 10 parts water, and then mix. So this is a wash. So Hansa Yellow Medium, very vibrant. Next we have the Quinacridone Sienna. Quinacridone Sienna. And that's the Quinacridone Sienna. Next, Imperial Purple. It's a very, very pretty color, Imperial Purple. Every pigment has a history. Purples, you may know, actually were developed from mollusks back in ancient days. Ultramarine Blue. This is Ultramarine Blue. Ultramarine Blue, while it's a very plain color, is one of my favorites. This is Quinacridone Rose, another Quinacridone Rose. This is Sap Green. Sap Green. Here's the Lunar Black, and as I said, it's a marvelous granulating color, deep granulation within this particular color. The particles don't like to be with each other, so they move away from each other. It's a single pigment, but high granulation. So that's Lunar Black, and I'll show you some of the neat characteristics of that Lunar Black in a moment. So Lunar Black. Quinacridone Gold, one of our most popular colors. Quinacridone Gold. Again, the Cascade Green that we talked about. Again, you can see kind of the yellows. You can see the yellow tint that it has, and as it breaks, you can see kind of the yellow. And then you can also see the blue. So it's a co-precipitated pigment. So it breaks apart in more than one different shade. There we go. And then the pearlescent. And the pearlescent, again, it's a mica. So it's not a glitter, it's a mica, which is found in minerals as well. So there it is. That is the Pearlescent White. Pearlescent White. Okay, so a very interesting selection of colors. So why don't we go ahead and let's look at them. And again, if you have a question, it doesn't have to be necessarily just about these colors. This is a really, I think it's an awesome set. But if you have other questions, please just let me know. I love questions. I did want to show you, these are 5 mil tubes. So there's Quin Rose. It's a 5 mil tube. And this is what the bigger 15 mil tube. So 5 mil, 15 mil. And if you look at the color chart, it'll tell us what they're available. And Dick Blick carries everything from Daniel Smith. So whether it's a pan or a stick or a 5 mil or a 15 mil, Dick Blick has it all. So wonderful company to deal with. So let's go ahead and let's look at some of these colors. And then I'll go over some pigments and what makes them unique, and I'll go over some minerals with you. So I'll pretty much go over anything you'd like me to go over. So let's start by looking at Lunar Black. So look at Lunar Black. And we're going to look at Hansa Yellow. And this is just interesting in what these two react. So oh, Didn't want to get my paper so wet. Okay. So this is the Lunar Black. And the neat thing about the Lunar Black is you can see how fast, how quickly it goes and granulates. It's such a marvelous granulating color. So really massive granulation within this particular color. And let me show you something that's kind of unique, that's really interesting. If we take it and we put Hansa Yellow, normally a lamp black, an ivory black, etc., would just overpower a yellow, for example. It doesn't have to be yellow. With the Lunar Black, the pigment actually moves out of the way. So as this starts to dry, we'll actually see more of the yellow. So it's such an interesting black in that it doesn't overpower other colors. It actually is floating, it's being pushed away by the Hansa Yellow. It doesn't matter how much of the Lunar Black that we use. That's the green. We can use a lot of the Lunar Black. And still, we are not going to overpower that yellow. You say, oh, wow, that's gonna just make that totally black. Nope. If this were a red, etc., you'd actually see it as we wait and we make this dry. You're gonna see that color start coming right through that black. So it's a very interesting color to play with. Here, what I did is I put down the Cascade Green. And you can already see within the Cascade Green how it wants to separate. In here, we're seeing the blue. See the blue? So you can see the blue. And that's because we're breaking apart that co-precipitated pigment. And then as we wait and we let this dry, we'll see not only the blue, but we'll see the yellow and the green. So it's a very, very interesting pigment to play with. It's almost like little gremlins came in the night and played with your painting. You should say, well, I know I didn't use a blue. It's because you used the Cascade Green. It's a very fun color to play with. And that's with some, okay, so that's our Lunar Black. That's our Lunar Black with some Hansa Yellow. The Hansa Yellow is quite beautiful. Let me show you that by itself as well. Another one is the Sap Green. There's 10 colors. So that's the Sap Green. This is the Imperial Purple. So Sap Green, Imperial Purple, can bring it across. This is a quinacridone. It's going to be Quinacridone Rose. Again, the quinacridones are gorgeous colors. They're transparent colors. They're extremely vibrant. So just quite beautiful colors. Ultramarine Blue. So they mix really quickly. This is going to be Quinacridone Sienna. Quinacridone Sienna. And it's a very transparent color, so it's an easy mixing color. The quinacridones mix very well. Easy to mix with. Very easy to mix with. Very vibrant colors. So Mira, this right here is a Da Vinci Castaneo. It's a very nice brush. I also use the Princeton brush, but right now this is the Da Vinci. I like it. So do any of you have any questions at all? I will be showing you when we're done looking at the colors. For those of you that, I'll show you how to read a color chart. I'll show you some of the uniqueness about the pigments as well. So my favorite color is actually the Ultramarine Blue. I know it's kind of a very plain Jane, but I love it. This is actually the pigment of Ultramarine Blue, and this is the pigment of the French Ultramarine. That's both of them right there. Same pigment, just different size. Thank you. I appreciate that, Mara. Whoop, I just went yellow. There we go. So this right here is kind of, this is going to be the pearlescent. And I brought a black sheet, just so you can see it's kind of hard to see it over the white. You can, obviously, you'll see a sparkle to it, but I kind of want it to be more super prevalent. So I bought a piece of black paper, piece of black watercolor paper. And I always tell people when it comes to the pearlescent, they're kind of like little lovers and they want to share with everybody. And you want to make sure that you're using a separate water for your luminescent colors, the duochromes, the iridescent, the interference, and the pearlescent. Otherwise, you'll share that mica with your other colors. And it may not matter, but if it does, it's just always easier. So, I mean, it really, and then if it was natural light, this would just be just so intense. So I've seen this where artists have used it for eyes, because with watercolor, it kind of gets that dry eye if you don't have something to liven it up. So they flip that for you. I mean, you just add the amount that you would. You can highlight certain areas with it. It's really kind of fun to play with. So how is Quin Sienna compared to burnt sienna? Different animals in a very cool way. So Quinacridone Sienna is a synthetic, and it's made for the car industry. It's absolutely perfect. It's an unbelievably beautiful, beautiful color. Let's paint that out as we're talking about it. You can make sure I get this pearlescent off my plate, or we're going to see little sparkles. So let me get that out. And the burnt sienna is a natural. It can be found in riverbeds, etc. And then it's burnt to change its oxidation state. So here again is the quinacridone. You'll see it's much more vibrant than a burnt sienna. A burnt sienna has that it's kind of a beautiful natural tone to it. It's not going to be as transparent as a quinacridone. So I'm using them directly from the tube. I'm putting them on the porcelain plate. I'm adding some water to show you what they look like. So I'm going to the plate and then mixing it on my plate. Thank you, Cindy. So my favorite is going to be the Ultramarine Blue. Ultramarine Blue and French Ultramarine probably are on almost every artist's palette. So it's PB29, Pigment Blue number 29. So sometimes I get asked, John, I have ultramarine blue, and the ultramarine blue granulates, and it doesn't granulate. However, it's like, you know, there's always another side of a story. You can get it to granulate by how much water you add to it. If you add a lot of water, you're going to affect the surface tension of the pigment, and that can cause it to granulate. Okay, so it's one of the tricky things that probably takes a lifetime to master with watercolors, which is how much water do you add? And that's kind of a beautiful thing. What part is the sparkle? So the one that has the sparkle to it, it's the luminescent colors. And in the luminescent colors, there's iridescent, duochrome, interference, and pearlescent. And so the one here in this particular set is the pearlescent. And the pearlescent, you know, we can add it. We can add it to just about anything we wanted to add it to, like that right there. It's going to have blue in it because it's added to the ultramarine. Let's flip it up. And as it dries, we'd really kind of see that sparkle. So, but it has to dry. That's where we're going to see it really take off. So the logic that went into the picking of these particular colors is they're all they're part of almost, some of them are in almost every artist's palette. For example, the ultramarine or its sister, the French ultramarine. And the quinacridones are used by artists doing florals or doing different type of landscapes. So they're very, very useful colors. And from my perspective, just very, very interesting colors. Is the paper wet? The paper's not wet, but let me go ahead and wet that down. So let's do the Lunar Black. And this time with the Lunar Black, we'll put a quinacridone into it. And we'll see what it does. So we'll look at it alone. So there's the Lunar Black. It's going to have that intense granulation very, very quickly. It's a single pigment synthetic, so it's going to granulate really, really quickly. Granulation is this effect right here. It's where if there's, so Lunar Black actually violates granulation. This is So here is a sodalite. This is a natural color, sodalite. It's made from this mineral right here called sodalite. And it's granulating because there's different elements within this mineral, and they have different specific gravities, different shapes, and different sizes. And that causes this granulation effect. If you look at the side of a mountain, the light stuff stays up on top, the medium stuff stays in the middle, and the heavy runs down to the bottom. That causes granulation, differential specific gravity. The lunar black is different. The lunar black is all the same size, all the same weight, and all the same shape. And it's a synthetic, and yet it granulates, which kind of defies granulation. And then its sister colors, right here, this is lunar earth, you can see has high granulation, as does lunar violet. But these are more than one. These are different particles, different pigments that make up these colors. This is a single pigment. So quite interesting. So that's a good question, Buta. Let's see. Ultramarine blue and French ultramarine have the same exact pigment, PB29. That is absolutely correct. And the same level of light fastness, yes. And the same granulation and the same opacity. How do we know what sets them apart? By looking at the color chart. So looking at the color chart, you wouldn't know what set them apart. Let me reach back here because I brought some material I wanted to show you. Online, we have the story of color, and it talks about the story of every single one of the colors. Okay, that's online at danielsmith.com. It's a story of every single color and a story about it. So how it's used, etc. The only way you would know that quickly is either I would tell you, or you could watch one of the videos I did on the C-Lab. C-Lab is how you look at colors. And I did a whole presentation that you can watch on Facebook. It's SIELAB, like that. Let's see if we can do it upside down. Oh, I'm going to mess up on the A. Okay, I'm going to take my word for it. That was an A. C-Lab. And you can actually, with the yellow, blue, the red, and the green, you can, I give you the coordinates. You can actually see where they're at, and are they yellow, green, blue, and to what extent they are. So that's the only way that you could really do it without somebody who really knows about the colors telling you that. Yeah, Lunar Earth is a single pigment, but no, I can't do Lunar Earth. I don't have it out here, but I've done it online. There's just, the unique part about the Lunar Black is it won't, let me show it to you again. Because I was going to do that and I let it dry. So let's try it one more time. Even on the plate, you can see it just granulates really, really quickly. So there's the Lunar Black. And let's put put the rose into it. So the interesting thing about granulating colors is granulating colors will impart granulation to even a non-granulating color to some extent. So that's why you always want to know whether you want to use granulating colors or not. A lot of the artists that are doing realist paintings don't use a lot of granulating colors when they're doing those, although they, in other art forms are doing, they would. But you can see how even with the Quin Rose, it pushes out of the way of that black. And that's what kind of really makes it super unique, is even if you put the black over it, it's going to start going away from the other color. So they're my favorite colors. They're unique. The Cascade, again, is a co-precipitated pigment, which is very unique. Cascade Green is very unique, as is the Lunar. The quinacridones are just beautiful. I'm asked quite a bit, what's the best way to test the colors? And one easy way to test at least 238 of them is to use the color dot card. And Blick sells this. The reason that we came up with these, you can explain to someone what a color is like, but as artists, I think not only are artists very visual, but in my discussions with artists, they're also very tactile. And the neat thing about the color charts is these wet out very, very, very quickly. You know, if you did a Pearlescent, they're going to wet out very quickly, and you can see what the color is. And you can put it on another piece of paper so you can see, you know, what it actually looks like and play with it to some extent. So it's not made to do huge paintings with. What it's really made to do is so that you can actually see what the color looks like. And while these 10, again, these 10 are a subset of 261 colors. And I think they're a fantastic 10. And this is another way of testing out a lot of colors very quickly. And Blick sells these. So this is the French Ultramarine Blue. Again, the French and the Ultramarine are very close. It's artists can see the difference, can see kind of the warmer, the redder. It's very difficult for other people to really make that out quickly. And it's whether you want to warm up. So if you're going to use the French Ultramarine, it's because you want to make it warmer, and the Ultramarine, you want to make it cooler. So no one's asked this, but I thought I would show you anyway. When we talk about the table or the color chart, there's a legend. And the legend is right here. Boy, it's hard to see that upside down. I'll just show you here. That's easier for you to see. So the legend is right here. It's on the color chart. This is just easier for you to see, I think. And for every color, we'll let you know whether it is staining or non-staining, whether it's granulating, what the transparency is, and its light fastness. So we have a machine called the xenon phadometer, and we test all of our colors. We can do in 4 days 100+ years of light with the xenon phadometer. So when we purchase pigment that's synthetic and it says the light fastness is this, we actually test it. It's our name on the tube at the end of the day, so we test everything. Non-staining or staining, again, is just whether you can lift the color up. So this is cobalt violet, and it's non-staining, and that's because the color can be lifted off with a wet brush. And then if it's low staining, like the Hansa Yellow Medium within this set, it's slightly staining. It means a little bit of it stays when you put the wet brush. Imperial Blue is a good example of medium staining. More pigment stays down. And then the carmine is high staining. You can't lift it off. And that's important whether you want to create a negative space to add another color in. You'd want to use a non-staining color, for example. And then the other characteristic that this color chart is showing is whether something is transparent, semi-transparent, or opaque. If it's transparent, for example, the Quinacridone burnt orange, this is black and this is white. So this is white and this is black. You can see the total black, and that's because the quinacridone is transparent. All quinacridones that we have are transparent. Permanent red is semi-transparent, which means you can see a little bit of the red on the black because it's semi-transparent. And then for the chromium green oxide, it's covering up the black. I don't know if you can see that. You can see it's all green, and that's because it's opaque. Okay, and that's what this is telling you. So really, with the color chart over a cup of coffee, you can make very informed decisions about what colors you want to use and why you want to use them, which is pretty fantastic. For each color on the color chart, for example, this is buff titanium right here in this corner. Buff titanium, let me show that to you right here, buff titanium. And if we looked at buff titanium, we would see the color. We would see what series it is. It's a series 1. That's the least expensive color that we have, is series 1. The majority of our colors are series 1 or series 2. And that's because we buy so much pigment and do all the processing in-house. What it's available in, this is available in 15 mil, 5 mil stick format. It's a pan in your hand. This is what a stick looks like. It's a pan in your hand. Or as a half pan. What you would see over a cup of coffee, as you can see, actually, the pigment name, this is pigment white number 6, shade 1. Pigment white number 6 is titanium white. PW6 is also gray titanium, but shade 1 is buff titanium. It has 100+ years. That's what the Roman numeral 1 means. It has very low staining. That's what the numeral 1 means. It granulates. And again, if it granulates to any degree, we say yes. And then it's semi-transparent. General rule of thumb, you can put 2 to 3 semi-transparent, not have a problem. Rule of thumb, if this were a total transparent, you could do at least 3 and not have a problem. And if it's opaque, you're at the end of your story. So I've been all over the world, and when people look at the displays, I ask them questions, and some will be looking at opaque colors, and I'm saying, so what are you going to do with that? Because I know if it's opaque, you're at the end of your story when you're using an opaque color. So it's very good to know this information. All the information is also on the tube. So whether it is a Primatech, it'll have a P for Primatech. It'll tell you the name in 5 different languages. It'll tell you the pigment information, etc. So if we come back, we can see the Lunar Black and what it's done with the Quin Rose. Again, we can clearly see the Quin Rose. It's just very, 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 very unique. I would show you with the Lunar Black. I just don't have it on the table with me. It was a very good question that was asked, but I just don't have the. So this set doesn't have a Primatech. For granulation purposes, the Lunars is just such a marvelous granulator. With the French Ultramarine, they actually all came because of this right here. This is lapis. This is lapis, the mineral lapis. It was the first mineral we ever made as a color was lapis. And both the French and the Ultramarine, both were synthetic forms of this right here, lapis. Kind of a really awesome story behind that. People ask me, well, do any of the natural colors sparkle? This right here is red fuchsite, and it's just packed with mica, loaded with mica. And it's a Primatech, and that's naturally occurring. Many of the minerals are semi-precious in that they can be used to make jewelry. So I purchased them from people who have either broke the mineral and can't use it because it works fine for me. I'm just going to go ahead and process it to pigment. But they're semi-precious. They're actually just very, very, very beautiful. Okay. So any other questions you have about this particular set or any color of the 261 or any of the other product, for example, the watercolor ground, which is very popular. Again, Blick sells that. Let me show you this pearlescent. Now that it's starting to dry, you can see it just, the more it dries, the more it's just going to punch out. You can't always, you're going to change what the color looks like the more water that you're going to add. For example, here, I took a dot of Moon Glow, took a dot of pretty much any color, and put 20 drops, 30 drops, 40 drops, 50 drops, and 60 drops. And you're going to change what that color, kind of its behavior. What I've noticed when I've done interviews with some of the brand ambassadors about how they do colors, time spent in their workshop, I would say every single one does studies of the colors they're going to use before they ever use them. And that's the really neat thing about the dot card. You can really play with the colors before you ever make the purchase of the tubes. So again, it's a very nice set. I'm glad Blick has these. You can see how Besnick has used them here in his artwork. Would you tell the story about the colors? I do a presentation on Facebook twice a week, and I've done it for the last year. I've had quite a few viewers over the year, and I go over pretty much about everything. So it's a great thing to watch. Yes, so Sandra says, can you tell us about the use of the ground? Absolutely. So the ground, and I'll pick, so we have several different colors in the ground. We have the titanium white, we have buff titanium, We have, this is actually the buff titanium, gold, and this is pearlescent, same color that's in the Blick set, pearlescent. And what it is, it's watercolor paper in a jar. And what I mean by that is, you could put this on anything. You could put it on cardboard. You could put it on plastic. You could put it on wood, metal, glass, plexiglass. And you wait 24 hours for it to fully dry. And then you can do watercolor on it. And that's because watercolor paper has sizing. If it didn't have sizing, when you put water on it, it would go right through. If there was no sizing, the water would go right through the paper. And so what that sizing does, it makes the paper semi-permeable. So imagine the paper was this thick. About half of it is permeable to the watercolor and the other half is not. That's the same way the watercolor ground works. It works the same fashion. And it's also archival. And you can put this on anything. We like to say no surface is safe with the watercolor ground because it'll go on anything. And the reason that we came up with the watercolor ground is if you were an oil colorist or an acrylic artist, you can truly right now paint on anything. Those mediums are very open to that. Not so with watercolor. If you put watercolor on wood, it's just not going to be a great thing. You put this on wood and now you have a paintable surface. So it's very, very popular. You can put it on minerals. You can put it on lamps, vases, doors, walls, anything you have for creativity you want to do, this will do it. Again, Blick has all of these, which is a great reason to work with Blick. It's a great company. And they have all these, so it's fantastic. The black is also very popular. If you're doing the luminescence, the black works really, really well. Black watercolor ground. We also have Frisket, and just in general, whether it's our Frisket or somebody else's, Frisket is masking fluid. You always want to make sure that your paper is dry when you use masking fluid. I get so many questions from artists saying, I have little fibers, etc. And if you wet your paper, what happens when you wet your paper? You're loosening all the fibers in that paper. And then if you put the masking fluid on top of that, now the masking fluid is going to adhere to those fibers. And when you pull it off, you're going to pull the fibers off too. So you want to make sure when you use a masking fluid that your paper is dry. Okay, just as an aside. Okay. There's so much I wanted to go over with you. It's there's just so much. It's taken me a year to go through the color chart online. It's been a marvelous time. So before I go, I only have several minutes left. Does anybody have any other questions? Because I love questions and I love to get stumped. Okay, for sign offs, I get a question about the cadmiums. We have Cadmium Hues, H-U-E, Cadmium Hues. Did this about 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago. And that is I wanted to move away from cadmiums. I think the writing's on the wall for cadmiums. And these are very high performance pigments that we use. And they have the same color as the cadmiums, but they're not cadmiums. So if you've ever been reticent to try cadmiums, you can try our Cadmium Hues. So the last 30, almost 34 years for me has been with Daniel Smith. I started in the computer side of the house. I spent 3 months in manufacturing before we were going to put a computer system in place. And I remember hearing the sounds and smelling the linseed oil of the oils. And I said, wow, this is a wonderful company. I would walk through the stores and I would meet artists, and it was always very open, very giving. And I said, this is a wonderful company, and this is a great product, and the people that purchase it are fantastic. And about 15 years ago, I bought the company. Been there 34 years and just absolutely love it. Couldn't be happier. Just work isn't really work. It's every day is fun learning experience. So I want to thank all of you very, very much for using Daniel Smith if you use it. If you have questions, you can go on to Facebook and just go to danielsmith.com or Daniel Smith Facebook and ask me the questions. You can also go to Daniel Smith and ask the questions, and I'll get back to you. I want to thank you all then very much for being with me today.